What's up guys, welcome to the channel. This is Migs. This will be my full Ahsoka episode 4 breakdown video. In my opinion, probably the best episode in the series so far. There's a lot of Easter eggs and references we need to discuss here, so careful for spoilers if you haven't seen the episode. Let's get into this, let's go. This episode focuses on Baylan, played by the late Ray Stevenson, RIP, who absolutely stole the show. I was really digging his character early on, but it wasn't until this last one where we really see he's a force to be reckoned with. Ray Stevenson, who I forever associate as Titus Polo in HBO's great show Rome, gives a newest performance plus really brings the gravitas to the show. The focus on him is why the episode is titled Fallen Jedi, which we also refer to that thing that happens toward the end there. Get it? Fallen Jedi? Okay, but seriously, this ties into the second biggest thing in the episode, the appearance of Revenge of the Sith, Anakin Skywalker. What's the first thing you might ask? Well, they actually de-aged the character, even though he was supposed to be older than that flashback in Obi-Wan because that's before the Clone Wars, but hey. And remember, although both are fallen Jedi, they don't exactly go on the same path. Anakin became a Sith Lord, he became Darth Vader, while Baylan didn't get any cool name like that, so we'll just call him Fallen Jedi and give him an orange lightsaber. They haven't really fully explained why, but I'm thinking it's because they aren't fully immersed in the dark side of the Force. So the episode starts off with the T6 crew, Sabine, Huyang, and Ahsoka, who's staring at a tree out in the woods somewhere, trying to get the ship back online. Sabine's trying to communicate with Home 1, which is the main capital ship of the New Republic Defense Fleet, which might look familiar to you because that's the exact ship we see in Return of the Jedi. And specifically a Mon Calamari ship, which is Admiral Akbar's species, in case you're wondering. Although I do find it strange that before arriving in Cetos, Hera specifically said that Home 1 won't be coming to save them, but I guess they're trying to send a distress message or something. Sabine also mentions Fulcrum, which is a reference to Ahsoka's codename during the rebellion, although this isn't referenced in the original Star Wars because she's relatively a new character, so they had to retcon a few things. Dave Filoni made it like she's the center of everything, as in the fulcrum of all the rebel cells in the entire galaxy, so she's supposedly a big deal now, but apparently they couldn't spare a few ships to help her. So the whole thing with Ahsoka here is that she's betting Sabine wouldn't risk the safety of the galaxy over Ezra, even though the entire reason she even went on the mission was because of him. That was her whole motivation. She even touched his cheek, for God's sake. I mean, the cartoon version of him, but you know what I mean. And I think Ahsoka knew that she'd have a hard time with that decision because of how important her friend is to her. This is also a callback to Luke's choice in Empire when he saw Han, Leia, and Chewie and the rest of them in danger, and he was faced with the exact same choice of letting them die or helping them out. Ahsoka specifically referenced the EU books this entire show is based on, Heir to the Empire, and that the most important thing is to stop the hyperspace ring from being built, and she tells Sabine that Jedi face these kinds of decisions all the time. It felt like this is the crux of the first half of the show, and I'm glad they played out the way it did because it shows these characters aren't perfect like some other characters we know.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine.
So Huyang's making repairs outside the ship was caught off guard and attacked by an HK assassin droid, you know, that kind that Ahsoka's been defeating throughout the show, and what do you know, this one doesn't have any weapons. Now I think Dave Filoni's going for a C-3PO like character here as we see him struggle with the HK droid in what looks like kindergartners fighting who gets to ride the swing. Huyang is actually voiced by an awesome 10th Doctor David Tennant, is literally thousands of years old, teaching younglings about lightsaber construction, and is shown by the show to possess knowledge of lightsaber combat. A droid like that would probably know how to defend himself. But let's go with bumbling comic relief character instead. So Sabine and Ahsoka engage the enemy, who now includes random helmet dudes. Sabine's utilizing her Mandalorian fighting skills here, 2 blaster pistols and grappling hook as she yanks one towards Ahsoka's lightsaber. There's also foreshadowing here of Ahsoka's aggressive protection of Sabine as she gets blasted on her Beskar armbands. Ahsoka stabs a guy in the face as she pulls one in front of Sabine as a meatbag shield. In the meantime, Hera's not taking no for an answer from the totally incompetent Senate Council led by a powerless Chancellor Mon Mothma and leaves without authorization, which doesn't mean much apparently, as literally nothing happens to stop her from going rebel, you know, because she's a rebel.
Watch me.
Anyway, she goes on board the Ghost, which is the primary ship of the rebels, and this is the first time we see it on screen. She was using the much smaller Phantom in a past episode, which sits nicely on the back there. She's joined by 5 X-Wing starfighters, one of which was piloted by Carson Teva from the Mandalorian series, who's actually known to skip a few rules here and there. Then they call her Phoenix Leader, which is a reference to her designation in Season 4 of Star Wars Rebels. Hera, on the other hand, wins Mother of the Year award as she willingly brings her underage kid with her to a highly dangerous situation, looking happy about it. I mean, they're going into battle, not exactly a kid-friendly place. At least Qui-Gon tells Anakin to hide inside the cockpit. Here, Hera's actually happy he's there instead of, safe at home or something. In any case, this unfortunate boy is called Jason Syndulla. His father's Kanan Jarrus, who's actually a survivor of Order 66. He was Ezra's former master who by season 4 of Star Wars Rebels sacrificed himself to save Hera. This means that Jason is force sensitive. Traditionally, Star Wars force sensitivity is passed down generation to generation, unlike Sabine apparently. Also, I'm not sure about the whole green hair thing. He should at least have one tentacle on his head. So we see Baylan and Morgan Elsbeth, who actually reminds me of Mindy Sterling's character in Austin Powers. Anyway, she's talking about the journey to that other galaxy. Baylan's concerned about the jump and says that a slight miscalculation and they'll be lost to the void, which is that vast emptiness in between the galaxies. Then Elsbeth tells him to have faith, which he says he lost a long time ago, probably referring to the Jedi Order and the code that he no longer believes in, which might mean he left the Order before Order 66. Morgan Elsbeth uses her Night Sister Force magic to activate the map again so droids in the ring can calculate the hyperspace coordinates. That's what Baylan means when he says witchcraft. He's also talking about the Night Sisters' force abilities because they're literally called witches. So Baylan stays behind to protect the map as Elsbeth goes back to the ring because the script told her to. Maybe to observe something, I don't know, since the most important thing in this entire operation is the map, as we learn later on. It's crucial in the entire process. She should have been there, right? Marrok and Shin Hatti come face to face with Ahsoka and Sabine here. Shin Hatti has a noticeable smirk on her face as she's keen to finish what she started on Lothal. I noticed she wasn't surprised that Sabine wasn't unalive because she basically melted her insides with her lightsaber gut shot. The blade was in there a whole lot longer than the blast shield in the Federation ship in Phantom Menace. I'm just saying. In any case, Sabine starts blasting at Shin with her blasters and leads her away from Ahsoka. Eventually, Shin uses the Force to slam Sabine to a tree, dropping her blasters and removing her helmet. Doesn't take much to remove a Mandalorian helmet. Apparently, I don't know why they make a big deal out of it. So Sabine ignites her lightsaber and fights Shin once again in a duel. Then we see Ahsoka versus Marrok, and notice she's only using one of her lightsabers, showcasing her skills. So she's equally as deadly or as effective in one lightsaber as she is with two. Then we see her lift the lightsaber above her head, which is meant to be the same form Anakin Skywalker used during the prequels, specifically in Attack of the Clones where he faces off with Count Dooku. Marrok spins his lightsaber, which is kind of stupid to be honest, but this is also a reference to Rebels where this all started. Just happy he doesn't use it fly like helicopters, which is just peak levels ridiculous. Anyway, he spins the blade and tries to slash Ahsoka with it just to give her that opening to cut him open. This entire sequence is supposed to give you that samurai duel vibes, which would be more effective if you haven't told us that lightsabers are useless now. Dave Filoni has actually done this before in Star Wars Rebels between Obi-Wan and Maul, but I'm not sure what's canon anymore. So we see Marrok take a critical hit and he kind of disintegrates like the Witch King of Angmar. You can see green smoke coming from the inside of his suit, which means Frau Elsbeth conjured this fella from a dead Inquisitor or something. Basically Dark Jedi zombie, which is like what Merrin did in Fallen Order. Remember Merrin? Anyway, all those Marrok theories went out the window now, well, until they explain what actually happened here. Then of course we get the big scene between Ahsoka and Baylan Skoll. I think he's supposed to be like Darth Vader for this entire show, and Thrawn's kind of like the Emperor, although as much as he's mentioned, I don't think that the show really does a good job of showing how big of a threat he is. We're just told that he is gonna return and that would mean more, but that doesn't really resonate as much with audiences outside of the Rebels fandom. This entire scene also feels like for Star Wars where they're racing against time to stop the Death Star from destroying Yavin 4. They even have the same radar aesthetic. So Baylan talks about Anakin and he knows what happened to him, but at the same time, he's not supposed to, because aside from the Emperor, very little people know what happened to Anakin. He's trying to buy time here, so he kind of uses his knowledge of her guilt for leaving Anakin. I also didn't realize until he used it on Sabine, but Baylan might have been using the Force to see through Ahsoka, sensing how she feels about what happened to Anakin and use it against her. This ties into what she said during her training with Sabine, that the dark side will unbalance you if you give into it. She perfectly avoids that pitfall with serenity and draws her sword. Baylan, realizing that he can't influence her in that way, resigns and says, how inevitable. Their duel was probably one of the best out of recent Star Wars. There's a lot of just them posing and doing their samurai stances, but what matters is that it has stakes. It gets you invested because everything's set up beforehand. Yes, Baylan might be a little vague. He wants to make the galaxy better, but at the same time, he also wants power, which is what he said to Shin. He might be planning to replace the Jedi Order with his own, which would explain why he had Shin wear that Padawan braid. But the odd thing is, despite how big of a threat this is, there isn't any mention of Luke, Han, or Leia. Even though Ahsoka has been shown to work for him in the Book of Boba Fett show, they haven't directly referenced the Jedi Academy or what Luke's been up to. Hopefully they get around to doing that. I think they want to focus more on Anakin Skywalker and his relationship with Ahsoka and all that stuff happening right now. Baylan Skoll shown to be a powerful opponent to Ahsoka, probably the most powerful since facing Darth Vader, but she's also become more proficient since then. She's only using her primary lightsaber here instead of utilizing Jarkai, which she mostly prefers. Baylan has a powerful lightsaber form that's focused on overpowering his enemy, although he's using his physical advantage over her as well. In between the fight sequence, they intersect droids looking at the monitor, which is another callback to the original Star Wars, and they call the place they're fighting as the Henge, which is of course these ancient circular stones, much like Stonehenge. They don't explain who made them, but they're connected to ancient Night Sisters. During the fight, you can see Ahsoka trying to maneuver closer to the map so she can grab it and prevent them from calculating the rest of the hyperspace coordinates. They jump back to Sabine versus Shin. They show how she's still having a lot of problems fighting her, but she's able to trick her and get in a blaster shot, just fooling her into a sense of overconfidence. Meanwhile, Baylan continues to taunt Ahsoka, saying she and her master a force of destruction. She kicks him back and is able to grab the map and disrupt the process, but due to the Night Sister's green flame magic, it burns her hand. Shin arrives, which tells Ahsoka something bad might have happened to Sabine, and she uses the force to throw her into a huge stone pillar. Baylan retaliates and strikes her more powerfully now and drives Ahsoka towards the cliff. Sabine arrives and grabs the map, threatening to destroy it. Ahsoka tells her to destroy the map, but she kind of hesitates. You can kind of see the disappointment in Ahsoka's eyes as she realizes that Sabine wasn't ready to give Ezra up. Then after that knowledge of betrayal, Baylan strikes her and she falls down a cliff. And you can kind of see Baylan's character here regretting his actions. He always gives his enemies a chance, like with the captain in the first episode. Here, he doesn't just grab the sphere from Sabine with the force, although he's shown to be powerful enough to do that. Instead, he uses the force to see through her and gauge that she's willing to give him the sphere for Ezra. Although it does give me a little bit of that sequel trilogy vibe with Snoke when he's sensing their mind, but turns out he's being deceived. I'm sure this is not the case here. So Baylan senses that she wants to see Ezra and uses that to get to her, hand the map over. He even mentions that she thinks he's the only family she's got, meaning her clan, Clan Ren, has been one of the casualties of the Mandalorian Purge, when the Empire carpet bombed the entire planet. He also stopped Shin from choking her because he's promised her to take to the other galaxy where Ezra is, and he makes it a point to tell her that he's unlike Ahsoka. Then they bring her with them to the hyperspace ring. Hera and the rest of the X-Wing fighters arrive before the ring jump. Elsbeth tells the droid pilots to ignore the ships, and they engage the hyperdrive. The ring passes through the ships and somehow causes electromagnetic disruption with some of the X-Wings, blowing them up, which reminds me of the scene where they do the exact same thing in The Last Jedi. Then we get that scene that I suspect is the main reason they have Jason in the co-pilot chair in the first place, is that to repeat this line.
I've got a bad feeling.
Which I would think is because they almost just got killed, but I'm sure Dave Filoni didn't have that in mind. We see Ahsoka wake up in a mysterious place, but if you're familiar with what happened in Star Wars Rebels, which I'm sure you're probably not, well, you'd know this is the world between worlds, where time travel is possible and is actually the reason why Ahsoka was alive in the first place. It's entirely a mystery why Anakin is here though, but I'm sure it's more Dave Filoni Force mystery gobbledygook. An early theory is that this is the real Anakin and that he's stuck in here from episode 3 and is just alive and didn't turn to Darth Vader, which I gotta be honest is really cool. Question is, what will Anakin show her and will she gain the ability to use that place to her advantage? Definitely this episode got a lot of people talking and thinking about what's going to happen next. What do you think about the episode and the Ahsoka show in general? Are you excited to see the next chapter? Do let us know down in the comment section. Anyway, that's it for the video. Thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see you in the next one.